A warm welcome to another episode of A Pan-African View, a platform to share our views on various topics that we feel are important to help us achieve the Africa we want. Keeping silent in the face of outright incompetence by most of our leaders, high-level corruption by politicians and business leaders is not an option. I am very aware that whenever there is a discussion by Africans regarding Africa's problems, emotions run high. There are those who believe our issues must be exposed and discussed openly. Then there are those who feel that discussing our flaws and limitations openly diminishes the African's self-esteem. We believe that Pan-Africanism and patriotism demands openness in debating issues because it is through such discussions that solutions to the challenges we continue to face are found. The discussion today is on the role of the African scholars in the development of the continent. Scholars, for the purpose of this discussion, are those who have acquired formal education up to the level of a degree and above. When you have attained this status, society expects much from you, and you have an obligation to contribute to improving the quality of life of your community. Africa has millions of educated people with first degrees, second degrees, PhDs, and other academic credentials in different disciplines such as medicine, engineering, technology, law, science, arts, etc. Some have received their education from the most prestigious universities and colleges, the likes of Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge, MIT, and different top business schools around the world. We are now getting graduates from Chinese universities who even speak Mandarin fluently. The question that begs is, with these millions of scholars, has Africa benefited from this abundance of knowledge and skills? Are our scholars impacting the societies in which they live? Society expects scholars to analyze issues, debate and challenge where necessary, influence decision-making, educate others, use their knowledge and skills to create businesses and generate jobs, and contribute to the well-being of those around them who have not been so privileged. At the university, scholars are expected to carry out research and discover new things that will improve the lives of the citizens. Those who have the opportunity to study abroad are expected to return and contribute to the development of the continent. Is this what is happening? The answer is a shy yes and a bold no. We certainly have scholars who have contributed immensely to the uplifting of society in many ways. We have thousands committed teachers, devoted doctors, a few first-class scientists, many ambitious lawyers, some hard-working and honest businessmen and women, and thousands seeking political positions. Now, consider the following presumed conversation between a Zambian media practitioner and author and an American consultant as he, the American, gives an account of his perception of the African scholar. The African scholars are lazy. It is you, and not those poor, starving people, who is the reason Africa is in such a deplorable state. Poor and uneducated Africans are the most hardworking people I have seen. I saw them in the Lusaka markets and on the street selling merchandise. I saw them in villages toiling away. I saw women on Kafue Road crushing stones to sell. I said to myself, where are the Zambian scholars? Are the Zambian engineers so insensitive they cannot invent a simple stone crusher or a simple water filter to purify well water for those poor villagers? Are you telling me that After 50 years of independence, your university school of engineering has not produced scientists or engineers who can make simple, small machines for mass use. The American consultant continues. Do you know where I found your scholars? They were at the Lusaka Golf Club, Lusaka Central Club, Lusaka Playhouse, and Lusaka Flying House. The majority of African scholars work from 8 to 5 and spend the evening socializing. We, white people, reserve the evenings for brainstorming. And you, my Zambian friend, you, the African diaspora, you are just as lazy and apathetic to your country. You don't care about your country, and yet your very own parents, brothers and sisters are in villages, all of them living in poverty and unpleasant environment. Many are dying of diseases because you cannot come up with your own cure. You are here calling yourselves graduates, researchers and scientists, and are fast at articulating your credentials even when not asked. While the narrative is highly exaggerated and unpalatable, it cannot be dismissed as merely the opinion of a racist American. True, it undeniably contains some bitter and harsh views, leaving us with a dejected feeling. This notwithstanding, some of his claims should make us angry and awaken us to the realities of our continent and, more importantly, to our own attitude and approach to responsibility, to work, and to development. Whether the American consultant was right or wrong, there is no denying the fact that our intelligentsia, be they at home or in the diaspora, need to play a much bigger role to improve the prosperity of the African people. Many got the highest grades in mathematics, the sciences, technology, and arts from prestigious colleges and top business schools, but have very little to show for their academic achievements and hardly any invention or discovery that has benefited us. In fact, many practical items we use in different places have been fabricated by less educated Africans. The Japanese, Koreans, Indians, and Chinese transformed their economies and prosperity by lifting scientific ideas, formulas, recipes, and diagrams from American manufacturing companies and making them their own. Our scholars in diaspora should be doing the same. The research findings and dissertation papers they produce should be our country's treasure to be used to design and manufacture products and services that we currently import. Nigeria has some of the most educated people in the world with impressive research findings and discoveries, but these have mostly benefited America, Britain, and other Western countries in which they live and work, and not Nigeria. But who is to blame for this sad state of affairs, perceived or otherwise, of our scholars? Is there perhaps a good explanation why our scholars fail to live to our expectations, and for those working abroad to continue benefiting other countries instead of bringing their knowledge and skills to benefit their own people? The late African intellectual and philosopher, Ali Mazrui, says that African scholars are mediocre and that this informs their inability to apply Pan-African ideals into Africa's development process. Sadly, among the factors which have facilitated this mediocrity has been the role of the African education systems, right from primary level through secondary up to the university, as a vehicle of Western influence on African culture. Our values take the back seat in our own institutions. To affirm this, all you have to do is to look at the international schools in our countries to which all the rich send their children. Most don't even bother to teach any local language. In fact, most of the children attending these schools can hardly speak their mother tongue. At the end of graduation, one has a distorted worldview dictated by an alien Western worldview. In illustrating Africa's confused development trajectory, Mazrui used Japan as a good example of how African elites failed to align their Western education with their African values in both their intellectual development and the continent's progress. Japan was able to develop by studying, borrowing, and when necessary, lifting technical and technological blueprints and techniques of the West, while deliberately protecting and preserving their culture and language. The Chinese, the Koreans, and Indians applied the same strategy in their development trajectory. The challenge confronting African scholars today is overturning a mindset of always looking up to the West for ideas and direction, something that has had the effect of retarding African development. Studies show that thousands of Africa's professionals and students have been leaving the continent for better prospects in Europe and North America for a long time. According to some statistics, brain drain costs the continent billions of dollars every year in what has been pronounced as a slow death for Africa. In a survey by the BBC's Africa Live program, some of the reasons why the continent is losing hundreds of its best brains to the West are among the following. There are a number of pull and push factors that facilitate the flow of best brains out of Africa. According to Professor James Buchan, a researcher on international migration of highly qualified personnel, some of the pushing factors include poor working conditions, limited career and educational opportunities, low pay, and economic and political instability. The pulling factors include higher pay, better working conditions, career opportunities, etc. Today, there are many more Ethiopian and Nigerian doctors in Europe and North America than in their country. The same is true of many other African countries. On a more positive note, someone gave the example of Botswana. It has almost no brain drain at all. Actually, it has one of the highest rates of returns of overseas students in the world. If Botswana could do it with sound macroeconomic management, a just economic system, and respect for human rights, there is no reason why the rest of Africa cannot achieve it. In the defense of the brain drain narrative, a scholar of migration dynamics says, in some cases, migration can be good for both the sending and receiving countries. As an example, the case of remittances is one positive thing. And should the political stability in Africa improve, it will not only attract its citizens, but also foreigners who would love to work in an African atmosphere. This is from a patriotic Ghanaian. I have decided to go home after graduation. I remember the toil of our cocoa farmers and miners that kept us in school. Consequently, I don't think we, the young ones, have any excuse not to return and contribute. My elder brother returned to Ghana after his studies in the US, and I can testify that he is happy, although not rich. Patriotism and Pan-Africanism is all that Africa needs to reverse this brain drain. And here is my favorite contributor. As a roving expatriate from a developing country, I agree with much of the reasons presented. However, I do not agree that we ought to wait until the conditions in our home countries become conducive and on par with the lives we enjoy in the West. Those seriously committed to serving will have to be willing to stomach the drawbacks and frustrations. Fortunately, the picture is not as gloomy as it has been painted. Africa is a fast-growing continent, and what is happening suggests a different reality on the ground. For example, Many Western organizations are investing more in Africa because Africa is the next frontier. This has led to a notable trend where multinationals on the continent are contributing to the brain gain movement. Several of these corporates are now replacing expatriates with top local talent and from the diaspora. In addition to employing Africans who are at par in performance with expatriates, foreign companies and international NGOs are realizing savings because the demands of an expatriate are higher than that of a local and also benefit from superior cultural ties. It is clear that for Africa to benefit from its scholars, there are basic things that must be present. First and foremost, African scholars should have a high sense of patriotism and commitment to their people. Their attitude to work and work ethics should be admirable and exemplary. They should not expect and fight for the same working conditions on par with scholars in the West. Those seriously committed to serving will have to be willing to stomach the drawbacks and frustrations. On the other hand, governments should ensure conducive and attractive working environment and conditions. The government should put in place mechanisms for career development opportunities, provide attractive and competitive pay and benefits, and should guarantee economic and political stability. One of the things that undermines the morale of scholars and other professionals in Africa is the extreme level of corruption in high places, especially by the political elite. Can its eradication be achieved? Eradication is probably the wrong word. Reduced is more realistic. Possibly with the next African leaders. Africa has scholars, professionals, businessmen and women, and a few honorable politicians who can help us realize the Pan-African vision of a united, integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena. As I sign off, let's keep in mind that the advancement of Africa in all spheres will be driven by Africans and not anyone else. But to achieve it, a high sense of patriotism and the Pan-African spirit is required. Stay well, and as we say in Swahili, asante na kwaheri. Your host, Gerald Mpshisi.